20 years ago, Neon Falcon released a title that would go on to become one of the most beloved stories in video games. A series spanning over a dozen sequels, multiple story arcs, and one continuous narrative. To call the Trails series daunting is an understatement to many. With its vast number of games and intricate storylines, it can seem overwhelming, even if the solution is as simple as tackling them one piece at a time. While the first game in the series has aged remarkably well, many players are drawn to the flashier presentation of the more modern entries. This contrast between new and old is one of the many reasons people are hesitant to dive in. This isn't a unique challenge though. Many series face similar hurdles, but Trails might just have it the hardest due to the ever-growing baggage it carries from game to game. As a result, Trails has long remained a niche series with a passionate cult following and an even stronger barrier to entry. But what if I told you all of that is about to change? In one of the most surprising announcements in gaming history, revealed during a Nintendo Direct sizzle reel no less, it was finally confirmed that the long-rumored remake of Trails in the Sky is happening. There had been hints, both subtle and explicit throughout the year, that a game like this was actually being made. And now, the first game in the series, Trails in the Sky FC, is receiving a full remake as Trails in the Sky the First. By bringing the most modern touches to the oldest game in the series, Falcom is aiming to overcome one of the series' biggest barriers, creating a game that everyone can agree is the definitive place to begin. This game follows the journey of Estelle Bright and her partner, Joshua, as they work towards becoming full-fledged bracers, guardians of peace within the Kingdom of Liberl. Their mission requires them to visit each of the kingdom's major cities, where they must prove themselves worthy to the local guild branches. It's in these regions that Estelle and Joshua encounter a variety of challenges, from battling criminals and enduring the harsh elements, to uncovering a conspiracy that threatens the entire continent. What truly sets this adventure apart is its richly detailed world and unforgettable cast of characters. The two main leads are a fun pair to follow, even more so as their feelings towards one another develop throughout this tumultuous tale. Every moment feels meaningful, as the lives of Liberl's inhabitants intertwine with your own, creating a dynamic world that constantly evolves around you. From what little we've seen so far, this remake is exactly what fans have been asking for: Trails in the Sky in a modern engine. In recent years, Falcom has been steadily improving its presentation, and with Trails in the Sky the First, it seems they've perfected the anime-inspired aesthetic they've been striving for. Visually speaking, this is by far the best that Trails has ever looked, even surpassing the soon-to-be-released Kai no Kiseki, which is already impressive in its own right. Trails in the Sky the First features a more stylized, cel-shaded approach to its visuals. Character models are outlined with thicker strokes, and the color palette is more vibrant than ever, which I think fits the coming-of-age tale featured in this arc of the story rather well. So far, the remake seems to blend elements from both the original game and more recent titles, with some notable changes in how the game actually plays. From the recent trailer footage, it's clear that this remake shares some similarities with Trails Through Daybreak, a game that incorporates real-time combat alongside the traditional turn-based command style that Trails is known for. In the original Trails in the Sky, battles were strictly turn-based and triggered by running into enemies on the field. There were no attacks available outside of battle. In Trails Through Daybreak, however, you can seamlessly switch between real-time action and turn-based command battles. This marks a significant shift in how you explore the world, and it seems like Trails in the Sky the First might be borrowing this system for a more modern feel. In the remake, you can see Estelle dodging an attack on the field before striking a man-eating plant, immediately triggering the AT bar to appear on the left, indicating a turn-based battle. If the game does feature the real-time elements from Trails Through Daybreak, it's difficult to tell with the footage we have. All we can see is Estelle initiating a battle with a single strike, no combo strings or anything. What is different, however, is the battle transition, which is completely seamless, just like in Trails Through Daybreak, reflecting a careful balance between staying true to the original game while modernizing certain aspects. Subtle details like Estelle sheathing her weapon and the lack of a loading screen when entering towns adds to a more immersive experience overall. In the original game, the turn-based battle system features a dynamic turn order where character speed and abilities influence turn positions. It's a system that emphasizes strategy with turn manipulation, resource management, and positioning at its core. The remake seems to retain this classic turn-based system, but with potential tweaks inspired by modern entries, like the ability to reposition your character before taking action. It remains to be seen how much they'll borrow from newer titles, but as with any remake, I can only hope for improvements to weaker aspects while keeping the strengths and identity of the game intact. Changes like balance adjustments to arts and crafts, the addition of the stun gauge, and the revamping of shields could bring major shifts in gameplay. However, I'm most curious about how they'll handle the Orbment system, which has evolved significantly throughout the series. This is one of the most defining features of the Trail series. It offers deep customization, allowing you to fine-tune your character's stats and spells by equipping Orbments with quartz. By mixing and matching quartz, you can unlock various arts, spells that give you the flexibility to tailor your character's abilities to suit your gameplay. As the first entry in the series, the Orbment system in Trails in the Sky differs significantly from later games, but not in a bad way. Many argue that the system in the Sky trilogy is one of the more complex and rewarding when mastered. It's a feature that many consider a unique strength of the older titles, and I can't see them changing it without a complete overhaul. However, keeping it the same would make sense for continuity, as the advancements throughout the series reflect the technology of the time. Now, based on everything we've seen so far, it's safe to say that in terms of the actual game content, this remake is shaping up to be something truly worthwhile. This is, after all, a huge game for Falcom. It's arguably the most important title they have right now, with the potential to elevate one of their flagship franchises to unprecedented heights. I mentioned earlier that a remake like this could solve one of the series' biggest challenges, and while that still holds true, there are some serious concerns that need to be addressed. One of said concerns is how this game is releasing. Traditionally, Falcom has launched its games on PlayStation first, with other platforms following later. But this time, things are looking quite different. For the first time ever, a Trails game is set to debut on a Nintendo console, with no confirmed plans for release anywhere else. Now, given Falcom's history, you might expect the remake to eventually reach other platforms. However, recent comments from a Falcom representative suggest otherwise. It seems that other platforms weren't even considered until now, raising doubts about whether we'll see this remake on PC or PlayStation anytime soon. Falcom's decision to shift focus to the Switch after all these years is certainly interesting. The Switch does have the largest user base of any current console, and with the remake being relatively free of the series' narrative baggage, it might be an attempt to bring the Trail series to a broader audience. And with rumors swirling about a Switch successor, Trails in the Sky the First could potentially launch alongside the new system, riding that wave of excitement. However, I can't help but feel Falcom might be missing the mark here. Limiting the game to a single platform cuts off a huge portion of the potential audience, reducing the overall reach of this remake. A game with the potential to introduce so many new players to the Trail series should be accessible to as many people as possible, especially since the original trilogy isn't available on modern consoles. Keeping the remake exclusive, despite the Switch's large install base, feels like a step backward. And that leads me to another major concern. You see, Trails in the Sky the First is 1/3 of a trilogy that is currently unplayable on many modern platforms. Even with the advent of Trails in the Sky the First, that issue will remain unsolved. So what are Falcom's plans regarding the rest of this trilogy? The first two games, Trails in the Sky First Chapter and Trails in the Sky Second Chapter, are about as interconnected as Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame. While both games have substantial story arcs and conclusions of their own, their overarching plot weaves them into one cohesive tale. And with this remake only adapting the first game, we might be waiting a while for the second game to be remade, and that's if it even happens. What if you bought and played the whole remake, and the second remake just never came into existence? What if you decide to play the original second chapter after completing the remake, but you can't because you only own a Switch? There's a lot of uncertainty regarding the future of this remake, and only time will tell if more information will surface regarding these concerns. So while it's in my best interest as a fan to recommend Trails in the Sky the First as a standalone game to as many people as possible, there is a wider storyline to it that, much like the rest of the series, may take some time to fully explore. And until we get actual confirmation of a much wider release, this and the localization effort behind the game will likely remain the biggest challenges for the remake going forward. But it's not exactly all bad in terms of how this release is being handled. For one, this is the first game in the series to actually receive a worldwide release, a rare move for Falcom, whose games tend to stay in Japan for quite some time. Reports suggest that the English script might stay pretty close to Xseed's original translation, which could actually explain why a worldwide release was announced so quickly. However, despite this promising news, there are still many uncertainties. For starters, we still don't actually know who's publishing this game. What we do know is who isn't: NIS America. They've been the go-to publisher for the Trails series since Trails of Cold Steel 3, so their absence here is actually quite notable. If NIS isn't handling the localization, then who is? Could it be Xseed, Nintendo, or maybe even Falcom themselves? Whatever the case may be, each of these possibilities bring about their own set of implications, especially regarding the game's distribution, voice acting, and the overall quality of the localization. Trails in the Sky the First could be a game changer for both Falcom and the Trails series as a whole. The remake has all the makings of something truly special: modern visuals, refined gameplay, and the opportunity to introduce a new generation of players to one of the most beloved RPGs out there. But as with anything this ambitious, there are some real concerns. For longtime fans, there's plenty to be cautiously optimistic about. The big question around platform exclusivity, the potential for future remakes, and the publisher's plans for a global release leave a lot of room for speculation. As much as this game could break down the barriers that have kept the series niche, it could also stumble if these issues aren't addressed. There is a lot riding on this release. Whether you're already a fan or just curious about diving into this legendary series, Trails in the Sky the First could be the moment that changes everything. But like any big leap, it's going to take some time to see if it truly lands.